Have you ever had this moment in your life where you feel like you've stopped dreaming? And this happens to so many people that I've spoken to. It seems by the age of 30, we actually stop dreaming. And now, for me to make that comment, you're probably reflecting and going, no, you're not right, or actually, you are right. I want you to think of this. Think of this when you were in your youth. Maybe in your single digit years, you may have had this dream of becoming a fireman or a spaceman or a princess or something that really was over the top, something that was so like, wow. But now when we reflect back, it appears that when we hit the age, and it's roughly, this is not an exact science, but roughly from the 30s, early 30s, the whole process of dreaming almost starts to diminish. We actually stop dreaming. And that's what I want to talk about today, is really a little bit of the science behind it so that you can understand why it happens. Then to help you to identify, are you in that space? Have you stopped dreaming? And then I obviously want to end with 3 key steps that you can take to reignite this process as you're going through. So that's what we're going to be talking about. It's why we stop dreaming after the age of 30. And more importantly, how are we going to reignite it? And I'm hoping that you're going to enjoy this, because this is a reflection from so many clients that I've been working with, that as a coach, I have to reignite their thought process of dreaming, because dreaming is really when we start to describe those goals up on the actual board, what we want to achieve, and then we start saying that gives us excitement. So why is it that we stop? Now, I spent a bit of time doing some research to really go through and what I want to call the basics of it. What are the basics of why do we stop? And I started to reflect on my own life and the people that I've spoken to. And one of the key areas is life's responsibilities. You see, when we get over the age of 30, our responsibilities in life starts to increase. It's our career and our jobs. It's also our family that we're working with. I don't want to say working with, but we've got our family around us, as well as our finances. And ultimately, what happens is our focus, it moves from the possibility of what we can have to survival mode, just to survive. And those life responsibilities starts to grow on top of us every day, every week, every month, and every year. And that actually starts to bring us back. But there's also something more. You see, when we start looking at our social environment, when we're a kid, we're all dreaming, hey, I want to become a rugby player, or I want to become an actor, or I want to do, we think so big and creative, especially when we've seen something live. But then ultimately, as we get on with life, we almost get this impression that people are saying to us, maybe not directly, but be realistic. You're not going to become a top actor. You're not going to become a top athlete. They start to almost use this be realistic type of tone and words to you. And it starts to settle you down, where it actually starts to crush the dreams. So you're actually having the people around you that you don't even know about it, and you could be one of those ones doing it to them, where you're actually doing the social conditioning, where it's actually bringing you down and down. There's also a bit of fear. When we get over the age of 30, there's this fear of failure starts to increase with our age. And all the stakes that we have seems to get higher and higher and higher. We don't want to fail at our job, because that's giving us the remuneration, the finances. And without the finances, we can't support our family and we can't do what we want to do. So that fear of failure starts to increase and increase, because we feel like, well, what we've got is all we can have. And ultimately, this thought process starts to get into our minds on an ongoing basis. And we start thinking to take out the risk. We want to remove those actual risks. We actually want to remove the novelty of thinking about something creative, and we want to do what we know, what we feel comfortable with. And the more and more we do this over time, it actually starts to reduce our thought process of actually dreaming. And as a coach, when you stop dreaming, goals, they actually become almost impossible to get clarity around. You just can't see them. You just can't feel them. It just becomes something else. So what are the impacts when you start to get to this particular point? Well, the obvious is stagnation. You see, if you're comfortable exactly where you are and you remain on that particular plateau, you actually start to stagnate because you're not looking at, how do I step myself up? How do I go from where I am here to that next level? Because going to that next level means that we've got a dream. It also gets us to a point when we're doing the same thing over and over and over, but we're trying to almost become a master of repetition. We actually get to a point where we start to burn out because we're just doing it over and over again, and we're not actually starting to grow ourselves. And that can actually lead to this lack of fulfillment, where we're not looking at what we're doing is actually giving us this energy to be, and I put it in quoted commas, happy. Now, looking through this particular process, and this is where I started to really go through this as the science. When we stop dreaming, we actually start living our life on autopilot. We wake up in the morning and we actually start doing activities that we actually can't even remember that we're doing them. It's just autopilot. We drive to work. We cannot remember the drive to work. We get into the office. We can't even remember the first conversation that we had with the person that we walked into the office. We are so much on autopilot that life just seems to go past us. And ultimately, that's when we stop living with a purpose. And that's what I really wanted out of today, is to make sure that I can remove you from the autopilot where you stop dreaming and put you into control where you're starting to get more purpose. And that's really going to help you to develop yourself personally, and really start to have this new energy that comes inside of you every single morning. Now, how do you know? How do you know if you've stopped dreaming? And this was something that I actually started to reflect on myself. How do I know that I've actually stopped dreaming? And there was a couple of questions. As a coach, we always ask questions to get answers. We have all the answers. And the thought came like this. If I'm going through my particular day or my particular week, and I'm actually saying to myself, so Monday morning, how am I going to get through today? How am I going to get through this particular week? I'm just looking at, what do I need to do? Just the basics. What do I need to do to get through this particular week? What I should be saying is, what if I got this week done and I was able to do that? You see, if I start thinking with a what if instead of a how do I continue, you see, that starts to ignite it. But really, if you're the person that wakes up and just, I just want to get through this particular week, how am I going to do this? I just need to do that, that, that. You find that your dreaming is starting to go down. If you feel like your life has become a checklist of chores that you're ticking off, and when you get to the end, it's almost like, well, that's only page one of pages 3 million. And you just got to turn it, and there's another checklist that you're just ticking off as you're actually going through. That's when you're starting to get to that point where life's not an adventure, it's actually a chore. You've actually stopped dreaming. When you start measuring the stability of your life, which is your job, your house, the bills that you're paying, if you're measuring yourself on that stability, hey, I'm great where I am, instead of the possibility, hey, I could be improving, I could be buying a new house, I could be looking at improving my car, I could be looking at an international holiday, you've actually stopped dreaming. If you're starting to feel almost envious of the people around you that are doing things that are crazy, They're going on holidays. They've got a brand new car. They're just talking about whatever that's so exciting of them. And you're feeling a little bit jealous and envious of them. You've stopped dreaming. And if you actually can't remember the last time you set a vision for yourself beyond this year, if you cannot remember the time, you've stopped dreaming. And these are the key characteristics that and I know there's a lot more that come out, but go through that. Think about it for yourself. Have you stopped dreaming? And I know for many of us, we're going to say, well, no, I've never even thought about that. But let me think about this. Oh, you're right. I have. I'm running on autopilot. I do feel envious when people are doing this. And I actually never think about next year. I actually just think about just getting through today. So how do we take that mindset and how do we transform it? How do we remove from what the social environment is doing to us to a point where we start dreaming again? We start having those levels of excitement. We start getting to a point where we're not only planning for what we're going to do this weekend, but we're planning for what we're going to do next year. We're actually going to be planning on what we're going to do in the next 2 to 5 years. And we're getting excited about it. That's where I want to get you through to, because when you can start seeing the clarity of the goal that's in front of you, whether it's a short-term or a long-term goal, suddenly the actions that you take today become what I refer to as relationship actions to that goal. Relationship actions to that goal, which means you're actually doing something to achieve that particular goal. And you actually have this emotional connection to it. And you can think about it in a relationship. If you do zero activities, you don't go out on dates, you don't have conversations, what do you think that relationship's going to end like? Well, it's going to end. But if you're having those actions, those activities, going out on dates, having those phone calls, those messages, doing the things that requires you to actually be in control of the activities, that relationship starts to grow. And that's exactly what we're wanting to do. We want to make sure that we get the clarity of those goals. So when we look at what we're doing today, it's not a chore. It's not a tick box. It's actually excitement. So how? How do we do that? Now I'm going to give you 3 steps. And they are actually very straightforward and simple. And it's these 3 steps that you can actually implement in your life right now. In fact, after you've watched this particular session, you could actually sit down and just start jotting these items down and really starting to create it. And it's going to start feeling a bit uncomfortable in the beginning, especially if you've got that limiting belief and dreams are just not there anymore. But the more you do it, you're going to start seeing this change and this excitement. And people are going to say, hey, you look different today. And that's when you know that things have actually changed. So what are they? The very first one, and it's a method that's been used for years in the coaching environment. And what this does is it starts to reignite your imagination. It's what we refer to as vision work. Now, vision work, you could do it with things like mind maps, you could do it with vision boards, you could do it with journaling. But the method that I really like, and it's a method that has been extremely powerful for the clients that I've worked with, is actually writing a future self letter. Okay, now this letter could be, maybe it's 3 months into the future. It could be 1 year into the future. It could be 5, 10 years into the future. But you write yourself a future self letter. Now, what's important about this letter is you need to date it. All right, you need to date it in the future. And what you're really going to be doing is you're going to be writing a letter to yourself. And by writing a letter to yourself, what you're really wanting to do is you're writing your letter, and let's say it's a 10-year letter. You're going to write a letter to your 10-year self, thanking them for the risks that you've taken over the last 10 years, thanking them for the dreams that you pursued, thanking them for the achievements that you've actually completed. Now, it sounds like a weird letter to actually write, writing a thank you letter to yourself. But what that starts to do is it starts to get you to think in a creative manner. You start thinking in 10 years, what am I going to thank myself for? Well, I'm going to thank myself for paying off my bond. Here we go. There's a first one. Believe it or not, if you've still got 15 years on your bond and you're writing a thank you letter for 10 years into the future, guess what? You've actually reduced your bond by 5 years. How are you going to do that? You can't do that on a stagnant path. You've got to think creatively. You've got to think outside of the box. You've got to think of more ways that you can start to either save, generate more income. There's the creativity comes in. So this method one is so powerful and it's so easy. Think of a date in the future and write a letter thanking yourself for the risks that you've taken, thanking yourself for the dreams that you've actually pursued. And the more that you do this, you'll find it starts out with a paragraph, reread it and say, you know what, let me do it again. And ultimately, you're going to start getting, and I've had clients that when they first start this, they say it's very difficult. The reason why it's difficult is because your subconscious mind, your brain, the neurons inside your brain haven't been programmed to think like that. So the more you do it, the more you're practicing it, you'll actually end up writing yourself. And when I did it for myself, it was nearly a 2-page thank you letter. And when I first started, I couldn't even get a word on the page. But going through this process, suddenly you start seeing more clarity and more excitement that comes out. So the first one, it's to reignite that imagination. And it's with that future self thank you letter. There's the first one that I wanted to share with you, which I think is going to be so simple, so easy. And it's something that you can do on an ongoing basis when you're reflecting. I promise you, once you finish it, you're going to look back at it and go, that was cool. That was actually, I'd like that. I really, really like that. And that's going to start to give you that new passion that comes in. So the second method that I want to share with you, and again, this is something that you can do anytime. It's actually to create a space for curiosity. All right. It's creating a space where you're actually going to start doing some exploration. Now, this might sound funny, but you need to find a place. Maybe it's actually sitting in the garden. Maybe it's when you go for the walk. Maybe it's when you're sitting on the loo. But what you want to do is you want to create a space where you can start to dream. You're just actually going to think about crazy things in life. You're just going to really look about, not about productivity task. Oh, I need to do this. I need to go and buy this. I need to pay this particular bill. Curiosity tasks. These are things that just, they put a smile on your face. You see, you need to find a time, and it could be a time once a week. It could even be a time every single day. And for me, I do it every single day. I will take a moment and it'll be 5-10 minutes. And I will think about something crazy, something that puts a smile on my face, something that many times makes me inside feel a little bit uncomfortable if I actually got to do it. But you have this time where you actually create this curiosity. And when you're doing this on an ongoing basis, you don't have to share it with anybody. You keep it to yourself if you have to. But when you're doing this on an ongoing basis, again, what are you doing? You're starting to reprogram the neurons in your brain to start dreaming again. So what it really does is it starts to get you to this new point. Now, you might think, that's hard. How do I get into it? You know, I can't just sit there and think and dream. So let's feel inspired. So this can happen before. If you find that this activity is a big challenge, well, then what you do is you start reading books by people that are inspiring, reading books by people that have done dreams that are crazy, like Richard Branson. He wanted to go in a hot air balloon. He basically wanted to do the 365 days around the world type of scenario. He went in a hot air balloon. He's done what people haven't done. He dreamed massive. You think of Elon Musk, the dream of putting people on Mars and making sure that we can live on Mars. Think of his journey. And just think about this in the back of your mind. Why would he create SpaceX? Well, how would you get to Mars? Why would he create a battery operated vehicle? Well, there's no electricity on Mars. So how do you drive vehicles around? Think about all these little things, and suddenly you're going to go, I never thought of that. That's about dreaming. So listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, get inspiration from people that have done it. And ultimately, ask yourself, what would I attempt if I could not fail? What could I attempt if I could not fail? But just create the space to sit down, dream, think about it. What could you do tomorrow that could be absolutely amazing? Maybe it's something small, maybe it's something big. What's great about this is if you've written that future self thank you letter, you're actually inspiring yourself. You'll reread that letter, you'll become the author of your future. And you will actually read that, and then you can start to internalize and dream and think about it. And you start to what we refer to as manifest it. You'll see how things starts to work into the action. So the third method, and the third method is, it's a method in the coaching journey that I always talk about with my clients. You're not going to achieve a goal by sitting and waiting for it to actually happen. You've actually got to do actions. Now, the big thing that comes with doing actions is, well, if I've got this, for instance, if I've got a dream of running a marathon, and I've never run even a fun run in my life, but I've got this dream of running a marathon. Now, you could sit on your chair and you could watch it on television and sit there and go, wow, I'm feeling envious of those people that are running. Can you see where those dreams are disappearing, as I mentioned earlier? But you really got this dream that you'd love to run a marathon. Well, what do you need to do? Well, obviously, you need to start running. You need to start getting out there. Maybe it starts with actually turning your dream of a marathon, as an example, into micro momentum actions, very small actions. So if I have a dream of going on a marathon, maybe what I do is I say, you know what, every morning, I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk. I'm just going to get into the habit of going for a walk. From that walk, I suddenly realize my shoes aren't that comfortable. So now I have this dream and this passion of actually having a pair of running shoes that I can just walk in. Well, now you'll find that through your work, through your life, through the income, you go and you buy yourself a pair of shoes that makes it more comfortable to go on a walk. Then you'll walk instead of for 30 minutes, you actually jog for 30 minutes. Then you find that, hey, you can do that and it's comfortable. So what do? You then start to jog for an hour. Then you find that there's a local fun run and you join into that fun run and it starts to grow and it starts to grow and it starts to grow. And that dream of running a marathon, well, guess what? You're doing the actions to get you to run that marathon, not just sitting on the couch and watching it on TV, feeling envious of the people that are actually doing it. So the third method is actually turning that dream into small micro momentum actions. How do I take it into the smallest possibility that I could do now that doesn't feel uncomfortable, that doesn't take me out of my comfort zone? It just, well, I can do it, which is so straightforward. You see, what we want to do is we just want to take ourselves into the action phase where we're starting to actually do that. And that can, in the beginning, become quite difficult if it's something new. So we need to make sure that we've got the support of the people around us. So we need to either have an accountability partner or we need to have someone that's going to do it with us. Because that accountability is what's going to help us to take these little steps forward. And one thing that's so key, and as a coach, I do this with all my clients. I start my sessions by telling or asking the question, tell me a success that you've just had. And the reason I ask that question is it could be something very small. Hey, I actually went for a first walk this week. That is fantastic. Celebrate those small actions. Because when you celebrate those small actions, they actually feel great. They don't feel like, oh, that was actually a chore that I've just ticked off. It was actually quite great. And I want to do it again tomorrow because then I can tick it off. And then I want to run. And then I want to do. You'll see how it will slowly grow over time. So when you're actually turning those dreams into those micro momentum actions, you're looking for those small ones. Make sure that you've got some support, some form of accountability that's just going to hold you when you're feeling down to bring you back up. But then look at the successes that comes out of it. Celebrate those rewards, celebrate those successes, celebrate those actions as you're going through, because it becomes positive memories that your body says, hey, I like this. We like the endorphins of excitement and celebrations, so we're going to do this on a continual basis. You see, the big thing here, dreaming, it's not about a one-time event. It's not about waking up in the morning and saying, I want to do this, and then it disappears. Dreaming should become a habit. It should become something that starts to inspire you every single day. It should be something that when you wake up in the morning, you have that excitement. What we want to start creating, and it sounds like a funny term, but we want to start creating a dreaming muscle. And this dreaming muscle that you have in your body, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. The more it starts to evolve over time, so that the dreams that you're dreaming of actually become realities. And the dreams of the future become bigger and bigger and bigger. And just imagine those big dreams being a reality. Imagine what that would do for your life. Now, there was a quote that I actually, in all these research, that I'd actually found, and I want to share this quote with you because it just felt so appropriate. I'm not sure who the actual author is of this particular quote, but it popped up in my research. And the quote is, it's more of a question, but it's something that will actually leave you with this thought process. What is the one dream you've put aside that deserves you to breathe again? What is that one dream that you've put aside that deserves you to breathe again? And this particular, it's a quote, it's a question that actually was coming up. It's just so powerful, because when I saw this that actually came through, I started to think about it. What were those dreams that I had in my 20s, my 30s? I want to say in my 40s. But what were those dreams that I had in my teenage years that if I'd achieved them, if I'd actually considered them a reality to actually go forth and actually just knock them out of the park, what would my life be like right now? And that's what I wanted to share with you today, is this whole, call it a challenge, of stop dreaming. Because when you can get back to that particular point, the clarity of the goals that lie ahead of you become a reality. So I want to thank you for joining me in this particular session. If you've enjoyed this session, please share it. Comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Share the dreams that you've got. See how when you talk about them, the people around you, this community that is around looking at it, aren't going to judge you. They're going to support you. Remember, it doesn't matter how crazy the dream is. Remember, we've got someone who wants to live on Mars. How crazy is that? Well, it's probably going to become a reality one day. So think big. Take this to the next level. And let's make these dreams a reality.